Evening, everyone. Hello. So we're going to start off with a couple of things that's been in the news this week, including one that's technically in the news, but it's not very prominent, about, again, the far right showing who they are, because the far right claim to be patriots, no, and they claim to want to protect women, which, you know, is a very hunter-gathery sort of thing to do, isn't it? Very caveman. But even that is powerfully untrue. I'm going to show you why as well, for those who didn't already know. There's some people asking there about the digital ID. So bring that one up later, because that is going to be a bit of an issue. I did do a video on it earlier. There's not a huge more to say about it, but absolutely bring that up a bit later. But just to begin with, so there's something... It is sort of in the news, but it's not very prominent, right? And so I did a video earlier today, just to sort of preface it. I did a video earlier today on how, so Nigel Farage, and I'm not sure whether this is wise or not. It's certainly a little risky. Nigel Farage has decided he doesn't want to get the blame for the massive surge in immigration we had, because although nobody is pinning it on him, they absolutely should be. And I suppose he can't take the chance that Labour at some point will work out how to communicate, right? And what I would certainly be doing if I were Labour would be saying, do you know that massive spike in net migration? 2022, 2023, that massive spike in net migration. That was caused by a policy. And you can prove it with, I mean, I know a lot of people aren't going to sit down and look through graphs, but you can prove it. It was down to a policy that Nigel Farage vocally supported, right? So Nigel Farage doesn't want to get the blame for it. So he's calling it the Boris wave, which is perfectly reasonable because, you know, if you say to Reform UK supporter, oh, Nigel Farage, I seem to have missed that point, Phil, where he was Prime Minister. And he was. Boris Johnson was indeed the Prime Minister and Priti Patel was his Home Secretary, the one he chose to implement that policy. But Nigel Farage praised it. He called it a huge step forward, right? So anyway, Boris Johnson hit back by talking about the national security threats that Nigel Farage poses because of his reticence to criticise Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Now, although Nigel Farage will happily say, oh, no, it's totally Russia's fault that, you know, no, absolutely, it's Russia's fault that Russia has invaded Ukraine. It's very nice of you. He nonetheless still says that it's our fault, NATO's fault, that Russia felt the need to, which is powerfully untrue. But nonetheless, that's his position, right? So Nigel Farage is making a big deal of that. So I'm going a roundabout way here. So what has this got to do with some news today? So you may have seen it. You won't have seen it prominently displayed. You may have seen it. The headline in the BBC is ex-Reform politician admits Russia-linked bribery charges. Now that is downplaying a great deal. This particular ex-Reform politician was Reform UK's Welsh leader, so fairly prominent, and more importantly than that, very, very close to Nigel Farage. Because you look at this and you think, so in terms of these bribery charges, by the way, he took money off Russia to make pro-Russian statements in the European Parliament when he was an MEP. Now, let's just go back over his past. So he was an MEP for UKIP, right, under Nigel Farage. And that's what people are saying, by the way. The ever-brilliant Emma Monk has done a debunk on it on Twitter, and apparently Blue Sky as well. We need more scientists in this. Because there's some people trying to say, oh no, that's UKIP, that's separate, that's UKIP. Because UKIP still exists, right? UKIP is still a political party. So they go, no, that's UKIP. No, it's not. Because these bribery charges are from after he was... They weren't from while he was in UKIP, even with Nigel Farage. They were from afterwards. So what happened was, in fact, if you look at... I'll read it out to you in the news. Nathan Gill, 52, from... oh Christ! I'll say Anglesey. Sorry, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna make it. I'll mangle the Welsh specific Welsh town. Anglesey. I can pronounce that. Pleaded guilty to 8 counts of bribery between 6th of December 2018 And 18th of July 2019, that's the point at which he left UKIP. Why did he leave UKIP? Because Nigel Farage had just left UKIP. So Nigel Farage leaves UKIP, right? He follows him, as well as a few others, right? And these bribery charges relate to when he was an MEP, but aligned with Farage. He wasn't technically in a party then, because the Brexit Party, he did join the Brexit Party and then Reform UK. The Brexit Party didn't technically exist. Actually, the Brexit Party did exist during the latter period of this bribery thing. But the point is, he was very close to Nigel Farage. And given that, Nigel Farage has... There's always been a lot of questions around Nigel Farage and his links with the Kremlin, as well as some other people he associates with. And, you know, you look at the fact that Boris Johnson recognises that that's the weakness, right? Because think about it this way. Boris Johnson, like Nigel Farage, he knows how to work the public. They're both populist leaders. They both understand how to, you know, what to go with. Their political antennae are quite useful for knowing what will chime with the public. Boris Johnson could have attacked, Nigel Farage for any number of things. Because Nigel Farage is very, in many ways, unconservative. And yet, he chose to go with that one. Right, even though that is a weakness for Boris Johnson if you go back a few years, but he very much aligned with Ukraine after the full-scale invasion, so he feels strong on that. And more should be made of this, and the reason why I'm making a big deal of this, and I may do a specific video on it, but we will see, is because the far right claim to be patriots, right? They claim to be big patriots, and yet they have a lot of dubious links with foreign powers, just in general, but specifically hostile foreign powers, right? You've got people like, I mean, even Tommy Robinson's group have got some links with some Russian oligarchs, but that's more a Reform UK thing. But even Tommy Robinson has got links with people who are attacking the UK, such as Elon Musk, right? So they claim that they're patriots, and yet you've got people, he's been done for, you know, taking bribes from the Russian state. And that should be more prominent because Nigel Farage was very close to him. And now it's not just that guilt by association, because Nigel Farage has also promoted Russian talking points. Nigel Farage has also echoed Kremlin talking points. The only thing we don't know is, did Nigel Farage accept money for it? He technically did, because he worked for Russia Today, didn't he? But in terms of, did he take money specifically for echoing pro-Russian talking points in the European Parliament? That's a question we should be asking, isn't it? Someone very close to him has been caught taking bribes from Russia to basically be the Kremlin's representative in the European Parliament. How do we know Nigel Farage didn't? Just because we haven't got the evidence. It's a question worth asking, isn't it? It's a question worth asking. But anyway, then there's the next point I want to talk. I'll catch you with some comments on this one. I know a lot of people talking about the digital ID. We'll get onto that. But I just want to go into something else as well, because did Vlad buy the house in Frinton? Was that the Clacton house? I honestly don't. I don't know, but that is another question that needs asking. Who paid for that house? Because Nigel Farage insists it wasn't him, and in fact it couldn't be him, otherwise he's broken the law. But we also know it can't realistically be his partner. Who paid for it? That question needs asking. It needs asking until we get an answer, because that does matter. That is a matter of public interest. It's not a private affair. Nigel Farage bought it. He says himself, he bought it in order to be able to do his job as an MP. So it's directly linked with his public duties. So we have a right to know how it was funded. And in fact, because of the possibility that he broke the law, that he's, you know, committed tax evasion, not tax avoidance, tax evasion, which is illegal, we, you know, there's a right to know from that point of view as well. So that is a question we need to keep asking. But anyway, another one I want to go into, because another thing about the far right, they claim to be patriots. They're anything but. They are shills. They are, because they're taking money from foreign interests who want to destabilise Britain. That's treason. I'm sorry. That is Lord Haw stuff, isn't it? That is exactly, they are Lord Haw. But anyway, then there's another one. Again, another story in the news. I've linked it in the description below, by the way. Because they claim, oh, we're protecting girls and women, which, by the way, for a start, is, a little bit dodgy in itself. But they are the biggest threats to women and girls. And I want to put it this way. So I've already mentioned before, we know that 40%, roughly 40% of everyone that was arrested for rioting, in fact, not just arrested, charged, last year, had it was arrested. Sorry, apologies. It was arrested. Had previous for domestic violence. So that means they were known to the police for domestic violence issues. And that doesn't count all the ones who will have committed domestic violence or abuse in some ways and have never been referred to the police. Have never been, because no one's bothered to grasp them up. So we know there's a way higher, because if you took a random, I don't know how many people, if you actually sampled, say, a group of men, would be guilty of domestic abuse, because much of it goes unreported. But if you were to grab a random selection of people from the high street on a normal day, I don't think, and even if it was just men, right, I don't think 40% of them would be known to the police for DV, right? So there's a way higher proportion. But there's something else now. Here it is. So this is a story about, let me just look where it is. Derby City Council. So we've had a spate of flags. I've discussed it once or twice. People putting flags up on lampposts, which has health and safety issues, of course, and it's for councils to put these things up, right? But Derby City Council have had to remove them. Again, it's, there's health and safety laws to consider. Now, it's a Labour council, by the way, still. One of these councillors, a Sarah Chambers, right, might give you a bit of a clue. She's been targeted by the far right for, basically being the councillor that's authorised the removal of these flags because, the council has to do its job, right? It's got duties of its own, which do not allow people to shin up lampposts and tie bits of cloth to them. So she's been the target from these far right groups now. Now, what form do you think this targeting is? Do you think they've been writing emails to her saying, Miss Chambers, I don't agree with this. I'd like you to reconsider. No. What form do you think it takes, right? These far right attacks against this councillor, this female councillor, Sarah Chambers, they've taken the form of threats of violence and sexual violence. She's been threatened with rape, right? Now, ask yourself this. If this group of people who deny they're the far right, by the way, but if this group of people who are, the flag bearers, the flag posters, what do you call it when you put a flag on a lamppost? I don't know. Tossers. But these people, right, they claim that they're acting patriotically and protectively, and specifically protectively of women, right? And yet what happens when they don't like what a woman does? Threats of violence, threats of sexual violence. That's what they are. They're, again, highlighting themselves. And that is why I would have made a bigger issue of this. That's why the media should be drawing attention to things like this. They should actually be doing a huge expose on who are these people really. If we had proper investigative journalism in this country, we do have a few investigative journalists, but if we had proper investigative journalists, what those journalists would be doing with Reform UK in particular, but actually Reform UK and Tommy Robinson both increasing in prominence, right? What they would be doing is reporting on exactly who these people are. They're reporting on the fact they've got dodgy foreign links and they've got a history of when they don't like something that a woman does. They don't do it to me. They don't threaten me with violence, do they? Because they might get a smack in the mouth. Now, I mean, they wouldn't because it's all anonymous, isn't it? But they don't do it I don't get it. I don't get this sort of behaviour. It's only women. And it's from one extreme to the other, right? The comments I get Reform UK supporters in my comments. I get Reform UK supporters who obviously watch my content for punishment, right? I don't complain. It's nice that it's not a complete echo chamber, you know what I mean? And what are the comments I get? I get comments like, oh no, you're wrong. They try and persuade me I'm wrong. Sometimes they'll say I'm lying. Sometimes they'll say, oh, you're a shill or something like that. I don't know who I'm supposed to be shilling for. The only money I get is from you guys. But nonetheless, you know, that's what I get from them when they disagree with me. Oh, no, you're wrong. And they'll try and persuade me I'm wrong without actually pointing out where I'm actually saying anything that's wrong. Or they'll just call me a liar or something like that. That's it. That's all I get. I don't get threats. Women get threats. These people threaten women. And it's not just like they call them rude words. It's not like there's a difference. I'm not saying there's just a difference between the way they treat me and the way they treat women. It goes to the other scale. It goes from, they don't even call me names other than liar or something like that. Nothing really nasty. And yet for women, it's the other end. It's violence and sexual violence they threaten with it. And this is what they are. And newspapers should be doing that. They should be promoting it. Sometimes they'll talk about the racism within the movement, right? But they should be talking about the sexual violence within the movement. They really should be doing that. And it's utterly disgusting that they don't. Because they're not going to tell me that wouldn't be good for clicks as well, are they? They're not going to tell me that wouldn't be scandalous enough for them to report. Because I understand some stories, they need to do it for clicks, right? They need to be ultra competitive. I don't have to be as competitive as them, you know. But so they view women as objects, not humans. That's exactly it. That is why these people are able to do it, because they don't see women as people. It's the same way that they, you know, in terms of the racism, the fact that they can talk about like physically forcing people who've born and grown up here, because that's what remigration is. That's what they're trying to bring in, right? That's what they call it, remigration. What they mean is taking anyone who isn't white and deporting them. They don't mean foreigners, by the way. They don't mean foreigners even. They mean anyone who's not white. They're white supremacists. And it's the same thing. They've been conditioned to not see people with different colour skin as human. And even some people who are white, if they're Eastern European, they've learned to think of them as subhuman as well. But it is, there you go. They back down really fast when I call them princess. Well, but and this should be reported on. I think something like this being properly investigated would be good for clicks. But they don't do it, do they? I very rarely get a polite, sensible comment from a Reform voter in my comments, always badly spelled childish insults. Well, I don't even get that. But, I mean, even if it is, I mean, that's still, I mean, childish insults is like whatever it is. You know, when you've got people, like this lady here was, because she doesn't know that it's just people blowing off. What if it only takes one of them to be serious? So she's now had to think about her security, her own safety, which is ridiculous for just doing her job. She hasn't even made a policy decision. She's literally just doing the job the council is legally bound to do. She hasn't even said, right, that's enough. We've had enough of the flags. I'm going to take them down now. She's doing it because which would still be a fair enough thing to do. But she's just doing it to comply with her own legal duties. It's worth bearing in mind, even the Reform UK Council in Durham did the same thing. They haven't had threats, have they, of violence? Have the Reform UK councillors in Durham doing the same thing? Have they been threatened with violence? No, they haven't, because they see them as on the same side, right? Because they see the Reform UK councillors, oh, well, they've got to do it. We'll change the law. They've got to do it because it's the law. We'll change the law when we're in power. When she does the same thing, threats of violence. Cara, they're saying, Mary Beard talks about the vicious emails she often got after her TV programmes. It's utterly endemic. It's utterly endemic. These extremists, you do get it on the left as well, I will point out, but the big issue we have here is on the right. And these extremists who are, I mean, they talk about integration. Oh, they should integrate. They should integrate. These are people who are on the outside of society. You know, it's not possible if you are integrated into society, it's not possible to see people as not people. Like, they see them as rats, as vermin. Richard there saying protecting our women equals protecting our property. Well, maybe that is how they see it, yeah. Frank, they're saying they know how you can defend yourself, Phil. Well, you say that's what I think subconsciously they're thinking, yeah. Because in reality, they could still send me the same messages and I wouldn't go out and beat them up, apart from the fact I don't randomly go out beating people up anyway. But I wouldn't even know where they were, would I? Even if I was a rager, I wouldn't actually know where they were. But on a subconscious level, yes, I think that is what they think. They think he's a bloke, I don't want to mess with him, right? Whereas with a woman, she should know her place. I'll sort her out. But anyway. Do I see a parallel today between now and the Nick Griffin years? This is worse, of course, because Nick Griffin was never able to become mainstream. So this is worse because you've now got these same talking points discussed in the Telegraph as if it's serious debate, and the Daily Express, and the Daily Mail, and the Sun. I don't really read the Sun, but occasionally you come across someone paraphrases what they've been publishing. So that's what's made it worse. When it was Nick Griffin, they sort of got through to people, and there were always like a worrying number of them bought into it. But I think it was limited by two things. First of all, the mainstream media didn't give them that much credibility. I mean, they did do in the days of Oswald Mosley, but when it was like Nick Griffin, BNP, they were a bit arm's length as far as the media were concerned. But also now the rise of social media. Social media, like, it used to be the case for people to fall into like political echo chambers. They'd physically have to fall into them. You know, you'd have groups of people talking in a cafe or a pub or something like that. They'd have to physically meet to so those were the echo chambers back in the 70s and 80s. You know, it was groups of people physically meeting up, and then someone, you know, you'd talk about with your friends at work or something, you know, and you'd get them in, and then get them to join your group, but you had to physically do it. Whereas now with social media, these ideas can spread. They can spread to people. You don't have to physically meet up at all. So that potentially massively increases the number of people. And the fact that the mainstream media treat it as genuine grievances, has put us in a pretty bad place. Will, I'm saying, you're saying that most people, is that me? Most people are sexist, that most people are DVers. Don't be unpatriotic or insult the greatest British public, etc. I have no idea whether most people are sexist. It may well be that most people are sexist. But I do know that most of these people who are taken to the streets defacing our roads and flags, and well, they are defacing our flags, are domestic abusers, because we know that 40% of and that was a good sample. Last year's riots was a good sample because, so someone tried to tell me, oh no, because the police only arrest the most violent cases. So you're talking about the most extreme of no, that's the beauty of last year's riots. If there was a beauty to them, the police were arresting people just for turning up, right? Because at the point at which it's a riot, you don't have to be engaged. You don't have to be lobbing bricks. You don't even have to hold a brick. You don't even have to be looking menacing. You just have to be there on the streets in that group, right? And the reason why that is, by the way, if people think that's a bit unfair, the reason why that is because some of those people are lobbing bricks. The police need to tackle them, right? But they don't know who might. Like, the police can't just wade in and try and grab the people chucking the bricks, because then what if others wade in and then they get overwhelmed, right? And the whole thing kicks off. So that's why it's important, even if you're just there making up the numbers, you are preventing the police dealing with the ones who are damaging property and being violent. So, but that was the beauty of those arrests last year. It was a proper cross-section of all the ones who will turn up for these things. regardless of whether they were the ones chucking bricks or not. So, and 40% of them, and that's just 40%. And you'll think, well, that's not a majority, Phil. Do you know maths? Yeah, I'm quite good at maths. But those were the ones known. We know that, I mean, anyone here that hasn't got their head up their arse has known people, probably a few people, women mostly, who have been abused by their partners or families, right? Like seriously abused. It could be mental abuse, it could be physical abuse, it could be both. I certainly have, and I bet you most people here have, unless you've got your head up your arse, right? And how many of them have gone to the police, even reported it to the police? In my case, I've known like one person who went to the police. So there we go. So yeah, it's reasonable to suppose that there would have been an awful lot more in those groups who were not known to the police because no one's ever reported them. And as I say, we've got more evidence here. What has happened? A woman, right, has said, you can't have the flags, it's illegal, I need to do my duty and take them down. She's instantly met with, inundated with threats of violence and sexual violence. I mean, like, you know, the correlation is too much. Just seen Farage is complaining that by Starmer branding Reform UK as the enemy, he's bordering on insightful, always diddums. He should talk. He should talk. Reform UK are the enemy. He literally fraternises with the enemy. If I was Starmer, I would come back at him saying, well, it's really easy. Just break off all your links with the Kremlin then, mate. Oh, by the way, I see your mate has admitted to bribery from the Russian state. Starmer should say that. He should actually say that. He should say, this Nathan Gill, right, he has just admitted multiple counts of taking money from Russia for parroting Kremlin talking points in the European Parliament. Nigel Farage echoed a lot of Russian talking points in the European Parliament. Now, was he betraying us for free or was he taking bribes? I'm just asking questions, right? That's what he should say. And that would be fine, by the way. Farage couldn't sue him for that because it is a fact that Keir Starmer can say that Nigel Farage absolutely echoed Russian talking points in the European Parliament. That is a fact. And all Farage is doing is not accusing him of taking bribes. He's actually asking the question, did you take bribes to do it or were you betraying this country for free? That's what he should do. Warren Pega there saying, I grew up with it, took years of abuse before my mum finally called the police and left him. Yeah, we all know these cases. You know, sometimes we'll know the odd man that is abused, but mostly it is men abusing women. And the reason for that, of course, is I don't actually know, I'm not a psychologist. Like, I've literally only found out I've got autism after 49 years. Like, I'm a shit psychologist. But it's because a man can more easily physically intimidate a woman as well. As well as, I suppose, the fact that we had society for literal millennia that put the man in a dominant position over the woman. And part of what's going on in society right now is we've got a lot of young men kicking back. Why? Because they've grown up being told, because for literally thousands of years, we've had a male-dominated society. It still is in all practical purposes. But legally it's not now. Women are supposed to have equal rights. And they're kicking back because they see it as a loss of power, right? They see it as a loss of power because they're not interested in equality, these people. It's like bullies at school. You know, what does a bully at school bully you for? They might bully you for being too fat, but they might also bully you for being too thin. They might bully you for being too short, but they might bully you for being too tall. They might bully you for your hair colour. They might bully you for being stupid, but they might bully you for being too clever. You know what it is? All these bullies, what they're actually doing is they're putting themselves on a pedestal saying, I am the perfect specimen of whatever, humanhood, and anyone that's slightly different to me, therefore, is inferior. And it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? You know, these are people whose egos cannot take the fact that they're level with everyone else. They can't take it. Rochelle saying, friend at work had ex-stalking her. Police were actually quite good. Muppet turned up at work threatening her in front of work colleagues, all on camera. He's doing time now. Well, and that's the important thing, by the way. Get it on camera. Now, let me tell you something. Someone I sort of know via someone else, right? This is second-hand information. I won't tell you. But they were out, you know, this is a couple that were out, a man and his wife, right? And it's the bloke who sort of told the person I know, who told me, of course. So they were out, and there's a local business where they live, which is owned by trans person, right? And they had the trans flag outside. It's on their property, right? This isn't a public lamppost or anything. It's on their property. So these two blokes trying to climb up this thing to rip it down, right? So this couple have a go at them. What you doing? Right? And they have a go back at them, and they pull knives on them, and they use the knives to cut the flag down, right? But they pull knives on it. And what I said was, at the time, what you should... So if you go to the... I mean, I still say they should have gone to the police with it. But what should have happened is, they should have got the phone out immediately. Because what we need to remember these days, the police will deal with things like this if there's proof. Like, you know, the police will deal with it if you can give them absolute proof. So absolutely, remember, you've all got witness boxes in your pockets. Bring out your phone, record it. You see it, don't you, sometimes when someone's being abusive. Usually it's racially abusive on the tube. People get their phones out. All of a sudden it's racing around social media. The police collar them. Charged. Happens in LGBT couples as well. It's mostly male on female. Farage's mate numbers. Hang on. Tate is the advocate. Well, that's another thing as well. When, you know, yeah, exactly. Andrew Tate, well, Tate's in general, but Andrew Tate. Nigel Farage really happy to pose with him. And this isn't like Epstein, where it's like, oh, I didn't know what he was like at the time. Nigel Farage knew that Andrew Tate boasted about sexual abuse of women and sexual control of women, right? And he's happy to pose with him. Like, how are these people trying to protect girls and young women or women of any age when Nigel Farage is happy to talk up Andrew Tate? Utterly disgusting, these people. And it's really, really very obvious. Amy there saying, I was only diagnosed age 44. Is this autism as well we're talking about, or have I missed something else? Diagnosis only really started to happen in decent numbers once Blair got in. Well, I mean, it's not a case of I'm only just getting a diagnosis now. I didn't even realise. I had no idea. Until literally everyone around me said, what are you on about? You had no idea, you idiot. But anyway. But, you know, it is certainly true. Autism has been known about for a very long time, right? Predates my birth even. But it is certainly true that knowledge about it, enough knowledge to be able to go, oh, maybe this person is autistic, is much more recent. And even when I was a teacher, Em saying, did I get the email? I haven't seen it, Em, but I have to say I have had literally I've had literally triple figures of emails in the last 2 days alone. I get a lot of emails, and I don't like going through emails. I haven't come across it yet, but I have a shit ton of emails to try and go through. So sorry, I may have got it, but I haven't seen it. But yeah, so even when I was a teacher at school, where you come across autism, you know, every now and then, because you may think to yourself, well, you must have therefore known some features of autism. Why didn't you recognise it in yourself? And it's because, well, I think it's because when you get a child with autism, first of all, when I was teaching, you probably got kids who had extreme symptoms effectively, so were more likely to get a diagnosis. And also, you tend to get it on a case-by-case basis, or this child has this particular form of autism, here's their educational health plan type thing. So, you know, for me, it was always a case of this is this individual's child's particular needs and issues. These are the adjustments we'd like you to take, rather than me thinking about common features. Because I do have an interest in I have an interest in all forms of science. I have an interest in psychology. But my interest in psychology derives from, first of all, I was interested in psychology in terms of how people learn, because as a teacher, it's nice to understand how the brain learns so that you can be a better teacher. But then in terms of politics, particularly after 2016, I wanted to understand how people could be so stupid, right? So I got really interested in how the brain works in terms of disinformation as well. But if you think about it, both of those things are learning how the brain works, whereas something like autism is a disorder it's a neurological disorder. So I haven't done a lot of reading about disorders, so I don't know very much about them at all. It looks like I'm going to have to read about at least one. Isn't there evidence that Tate is a paedophile? I think the fact that he boasts about having sex with girls that are below the age of legal consent, yes, I would say so. Obviously, what we need is for him to be actually brought to a country where he's going to be facing court. Like this country, we'll put him on trial. Ride further, they're saying, called him an important voice for men. Yeah, they're absolutely disgusting, these people. And it should be pointed out every single time that they try and claim they're just protecting women and young girls. No, you're not. You are the worst abusers of them. Someone made a joke, a few weeks ago when they were painting the crosses on the roundabouts and stuff. And someone said, how is painting crosses on roundabouts and putting flags on lampposts supposed to be protecting women and young girls? And someone else said, because all the abusers are out painting flags on roundabouts and putting flags up lampposts, right? We all know it. Anyone who's got their eyes open knows exactly who these people are and what these people are. Absolute hypocrites. They don't test for dyslexia. Who doesn't? I've worked in lots of places that test for dyslexia. Dyslexia is much more common, or commonly understood by well, I did anyway. But I think teachers would have known much more commonly about because I've actually referred several students for dyslexia testing. I've never referred anyone for autism testing because I don't know enough about it. Someone's saying, I bet you are, I don't even know what this means. I bet you are INTJ on the MBTI test. Right. So is that something I'm going to be doing then? So in terms of where I am with this, so I've had one diagnostic with a psychiatrist who's basically said, yeah, you are. But then in order to get the actual diagnosis, I have to go through several more sessions, including one in person in London. So are you telling me that is one of the things that's got waiting for me? I don't even know what this is. I honestly have no idea about anything. I know exactly what you're talking about, Ori. Not seeing it in yourself. Read about autism when I've been told I was autistic and thought, really? Part one. Peeps I've met with ADHD seemed more extreme than me until I researched it and did several screening tests. Well, that would be the thing, isn't it? When you've only come across people who exhibit extreme symptoms, which as a teacher I have done, because if they're diagnosed as kids, they will have presented fairly extreme symptoms. Whereas I've coped. I've always known that I've been, had social issues. But then there's so I'll do a video on it. I'll do it because I've got to do a video anyway, because on Monday, I'm going to be in Liverpool, Graham's Labour conference fringe thing, which I have put a link to it on the posts section of the channel, if you want to click on that. Because there are tickets still available. I think they are free if anyone happens to be in Liverpool. That's Monday evening. So I'm there for that, which basically means I'm not going to be here on Monday afternoon, evening or Tuesday morning. So I have to do an extra couple of videos in advance if I can. Maybe I'll just talk about that one. Maybe raise awareness. The MBTI test is like a psychological profile, a little bit of pseudoscience thing, but it has value. Oh, I'm going to... if you've used the word pseudoscience there, I'm guessing a qualified psychiatrist is not going to give it to me. It has value 4 different characteristics. Each can be one of 2 options, so 16 combinations total. I see, okay. Chris there said, talking about I became the master of masks, caused me no end of issues till I accepted me for me. Well, the thing is, like for me, I've never tried to Obviously, you adapt to society, right? You accept certain things. But I've never tried to cover up who I am. I just thought I was introverted. I just had the wrong label for it. I still am introverted. That's quite clear, by the way. But I'm introverted and autistic, apparently. So it seems. But it'll be some time before I get the full breakdown of everything, I guess. But yeah, so I've never sort of tried. I've never thought to myself, oh, this particular trait of mine is a disadvantage, therefore I will hide it. I've never thought that. I just didn't realise. And I certainly knew I wasn't normal. But who wants to be normal if you look at what normal does? Normal goes out on the streets and puts flags up poles for some reason. Well, the poles are fine. Puts flags up lampposts for some reason. Oh, Parents, they're saying, IND, waiting to see if I've got ADHD or autism. Back in the day, I was wondering how anyone could see Bojo as charismatic, still comprehend it, but it's something for NT peeps, maybe. But some people appeal to some others anyway. I mean, again, I just base it on the idea. I mean, Boris Johnson, I've always said is charismatic, not because I find him charismatic. I don't find anyone charismatic at all. I don't have heroes at all. I don't look up to people. You know, my attitude to literally everyone is that person either does good things or they do bad things, or maybe they do a mixture. I don't look up to anyone ever, and I never have. But the reason I accepted him as charismatic is because he clearly was, because a lot of people, you know, would agree with him when he talks absolute shit. It's the same with music. You know, I'm not a fan of like Rolling Stones music or the Beatles, but I accept they're great bands because lots of people love their music. So I'd still describe them as a great band, even though I look at it and go, we sang these as children. They're nursery rhymes. Masking isn't a conscious action. Well, maybe not. I don't know anything. See, that's the thing, you see. I don't know anything about these things. I have zero expertise, even in my own condition now. So, yes, personality and neurology aren't the same thing, so you can be introverted or extroverted for that matter, and ND. Well, indeed. Christian Slater's pretty charismatic. Come on, Phil. Like, I know the name. Is that an actor? Who's Christian Slater? Sure I know them? Steve Irwin was who I modelled how to be a man from when I was growing up. Showed me that no matter the horror and hate in the world, there's also wonder and love too. Also mean love of learning. See, I've never had that with anyone. You know, I've never had that with anyone. I've mostly been inspired by sayings, phrases, which may have come from a person, of course. Well, they all did. All phrases have come from someone. But yeah, when I've been sort of inspired, I've been inspired by like statements or phrases, you know, proverbs or bits of wisdom rather than individual people. Because the thing is, you don't have to live, you know, even by the time you're 10, someone that you thought were decent then does something dodgy. I mean, you know, someone of my age, when we grew up, we will have watched like Rolf Harris. Oh, I like Rolf Harris, draws the cartoons, don't do them, you know, and you'd watched his art program, stuff like that, and then you find out he's a really dodgy geezer. You know, you can see the same thing of anyone. So you just sort of, you even though I didn't learn about that when I was a child, but there were still cases where someone you thought was all right then wasn't. Because there's always, people get found out about dodgy behaviour all the time, celebrities. Mr. T, when I was a kid, turns out not to be a bad shout, still a good man. Yeah, Mr. T's all right. He hasn't done anything dodgy as far as I know. Christian Slater is the kid in Robin Hood with the bodyguard. The guy, okay, who played Will Scarlett in the Kevin Costner one, I see, okay. I don't watch films really much. I don't watch films. He would have got on with my dad. He had the same view of the Beatles, etc. Mind, he was self-described classical music. No, I like all types of music. No, I like some of all types of music. So there's some classical music I like, and there's some classical music I think is shite. Yeah, there's some punk music I like, and there's some punk music I think is shite. There's some rap music I think is good, and there's some rap music I think is appalling. And it's the same with everything. You know, I'm not actually a big fan of music. I don't listen to music very often. In fact, in a typical week, I don't listen to music at all. I just sometimes listen to music. So I'm not a music buff at all. All right, go on to the last 15 minutes then, the digital ID. Will, they're saying, I don't understand what value the digital ID is supposed to be. Proof of right to work, that's it. Would issuing driver's license or provisionals for free be better? No, because they don't give you that. So there's multiple benefits. The overarching benefit, I would say, is it just makes us more normal. Like, there's lots of people going, oh, this is an authoritarian move. And what I would actually say is, actually, if you look at the countries that already have it, they are the most liberal democracies in the world. It actually protects liberal democracies, these things, right? The people against it are the ones who don't, like, you don't get these in authoritarian countries. They don't exist, right? And the other thing I would say is this, and I did say this in the video, but first of all, you all have digital ID. No one, it's impossible for you to talk to me in this chat without digital ID. It's just that those details you've given to a company, you may even be paying to give them to a company, whether it be Google or Meta or Facebook, whatever the hell they're called, or Twitter. You know, I had someone in the comments say they're all right with it as long as it's not Palantir who does it or something like that. To which I had to reply, how do you know Palantir don't have your stuff? Because first of all, it will be administered by civil servants. It won't be a private American corporation that manages it. It will obviously be somewhat, they'll obviously have to contract out the building of the system, but they may well use someone that's been used in Europe. Like in Europe, almost every European country has national ID. Not all of them have digital ID, but most of them are working on it. I think most of them are working on it. So it's just a normal thing to just become normal with Europe again. But also, you know, when I think back to whenever I've got a new job and I've had to, because you have to prove you're entitled to work, right? It's no good. I can't just go, have you heard me accent, mate? Of course I'm from Britain. Of course I've got entitled to work. That's not good enough. So you have to prove it, right? I've got a driver's license. I needed shitloads. I had to produce armfuls of documents to prove I had right to work. If you've got a passport and a driver's license, great. It's easy. And I get how people who've got both those things think, well, what's the problem? What's the problem? You just got these things. What if you don't? I have a driver's license, but I don't have a passport. So I have had to bring ridiculous amounts of things with me. Some things which are not that easy to get hold of, quite frankly. When I first had to do what's it called now? Tax returns. When I first started monetizing YouTube, not this channel, my previous channel. So when I first started monetizing YouTube, which meant I was getting additional income, so I had to do tax returns, right? I had to do the paper-based one. I couldn't do the online one because I didn't have the proof. You have this thing called Government Gateway to do the online stuff. And I didn't have enough proof. I literally couldn't prove. I couldn't prove that I was entitled to pay my taxes in this country because I didn't have a passport. I had a driver's license, I had bank accounts, I had stuff like that. It wasn't good enough. Whereas digital ID, you'd be straight in. So in order to be able to do the online tax returns, which are still a hassle but easier, I had to wait 3 years because after 3 years, me having the tax returns, then that was another form of proof which swung it for me. So it's actually, I get, you know, so if you've got a passport and a driving license, you have no problem proving your identity. But I'll tell you what, if you don't have that, if you don't have a passport particularly, it's a massive hassle to prove who you are. It's a massive hassle. Honestly, this would make it so much easier. My concern with it, and this thing about state overreach, how is it state overreach? It's just an ID. You need ID for everything. You need ID to piss in vote these days, which is also normal in other countries, by the way. Is Fujitsu the proposed contractor? So I don't know who will build the system. I strongly suspect it won't be Fujitsu. To be perfectly honest, it's your national insurance number is a proof of right to work. No, it's not. It's not. It's just a number. How do they know it's your number? That's not proof to work at all. You could be giving them a fake number. The proof to work is, you look at the proof. Shall I look it up? We've only got a few minutes. Let's see if I can find it. Let's have a look here. Hold on. If you've got a driver's license and right, here we go. Right, so if you've got a passport, great. Let's go down the list. You've got list A and list B and list B, B1, B2. Basically, you need shitloads, right? So if you've got a passport, quid's in, right, on list A. If you haven't got a passport, let's go down list A. So a passport or passport card. So an EU or citizen might have that. We don't, because we don't have them, right? A document issued by the Bailiwick of Jersey, the Bailiwick of Guernsey, or the Isle of Man. We don't have that. I don't have those. A current passport, don't have it. A current immigration status document, don't have it. At this point, a migrant has an easier time proving right to work than a British citizen, right? So you're going down this list A. A birth or adoption certificate, and you think, okay, well, we've all got that, right? Together with an official document giving the person's permanent national insurance number and their name issued by a government agency or previous employer. Well, what if you don't have that? What if this is your first job you're going for? You ain't got it, right? So the birth certificate's not enough. Then you've got a certificate of registration or natural. So basically, you go down that list A, it's actually possible to be a British citizen and you don't have any of those things. You don't have any of them. It's honestly, it's actually really hard to prove your identity in this country. Migrants have an easier job of it because they will have a current immigration status document or something like that. You know, or if they're, let's say they've got permanent right of residency, but they're not a UK citizen, they've probably got a passport from where they are a citizen so they can travel easily, right? Because migrants are more likely to travel abroad, right? To go back home every now and then. So they're likely to have a passport. I ain't got any of them. Well, actually now I would struggle now. So obviously once I was in working, then I was able to get the birth certificate along with an official document with my national insurance number, because that would be a pay slip, right? But then you still need your name issued by a government agency or previous employer. So you would have that. What if you don't have a previous employer? What if you don't have a wage slip? What if you don't have anything with your national insurance? Like your national insurance number, it gets sent to you when you're 15 on a card, which I broke when I was pissing 17, right? I haven't seen it since I was about 20. So it is incredibly difficult to prove your identity. And because it's incredibly difficult to prove your identity, it opens up the whole thing to an employer going, looking at something and scratching their head and going, if they're a small employer, right, who doesn't have like where I've been employed, it's been schools, so they've got dedicated personnel staff. They know their stuff, right? So they know the rules like the back of their hand because they do it all the time. If you're a small business owner and you employ someone every now and then, you're having to relearn it every time, and you look at the document someone's presented you with and you're going, is that right? I don't know. Yeah, okay. And you take your copy, and people get clobbered all the time, right? It's not easy. Whereas if you had digital ID, you had one form of ID, because remember, the passport on its own doesn't do it. That's just for list A, right? There's then a list B. There's two list Bs, in fact, right? So, but if the best way is to have a passport and a driving license. That'll do you. If you don't have them, you're knackered. So driver's licenses don't function as proof of right to work for everyone. Is that the only thing the digital ID serves as? Entirely new digital system everyone is forced into. That's enough, isn't it? Isn't that enough? The other thing I would say about this is I don't understand what the objection is to it, because it just makes it massively more convenient for everything. Like, even like you can everything you need. You might not need many public services, but for people who do, to have a single digital ID on their phone, which they're required to have anyway, it just makes it so much easier. My only concerns are the technical challenges. Can they do it before the election? Because this, it's really obvious, is a political hornet's nest. I said in my video, I think this is politically risky, right? You can see by the petition, there's a shitload of people don't like the idea, right? I think some of their concerns are invalid. Some of them will be valid. But you say Palantir getting all your data in one bite-sized package. No, they've already got it. Vince, they've already got it. Whoever designs the system designs them not for governments. They design them for the private sector. They've already got it. This is actually safer than each of you probably has multiple digital IDs already, with maybe more information than will be on the government one. He's saying, to be fair, this is another instance of Labour failing to explain this and instead trying to tie this to immigration. They should present the benefits as well. Yes. But I would say, if I was advising them, I would have advised them not to do it yet. I'd have advised them to wait. Because, see, the way it works is this, politically speaking, this is how it works, right? So you announce, think about policies, right? People familiar with the Dungeons and Dragons like grid will be familiar with this. But imagine policies measured by two different factors. One is it a good policy? Is it a bad policy? And you think to yourself, well, why would a government put in place a bad policy? Governments put in place bad policies all the time, not because they're idiots, but because for political reasons. So a policy is either good, neutral, or bad. And a policy is either popular, neutral, or unpopular, right? So let's say you've got this policy which is good. When I say good, by the way, I mean in the estimation of the government. Obviously, a policy that Labour think is good, Conservatives think is bad, and vice versa. So we know it's whether a policy is good or bad can be subjective. But in the eyes of the government, if the policy is a good policy, therefore something you should implement. But let's say it's unpopular. Now, if it's popular and good, you quids in, go for it, right? But if it's good but unpopular, then you think to yourself, it's not worth losing the election over, so what do? Well, you implement it several years before the election, and the idea is that a lot of people are thinking this is going to be a really terrible thing and it's going to go disastrously wrong, so that when the election rolls around and actually the sky hasn't fallen and people go, oh, it was all right after all, and then it's fine. That's the thinking. My thinking is, you're giving yourself not even 4 years to do this, 3.5 years, right? It's got to be, they insist it's going to be fully implemented by the next election. I'm thinking to myself, are you sure? Now, they're likely to have communicated with other governments in Europe who've already done this, right? And said, like, what are the learning points? But, can you do that? And then we know IT systems, they don't always work first time, do they? So what if something goes wrong? Like, I don't understand why a government would do this when it's as unpopular as it is. That's what I don't understand. However, that's from a political point of view. From a policy point of view, which is not the same thing as politics always, although in theory it's supposed to be. From a policy point of view, it's a good policy. It would have been immensely useful to me. It would be immensely useful to me. I would love to have just one pissing ID. But I worry that they're embarking on what... Actually, I say unpopular policy. Technically, it's not unpopular because there has been polling on this. Let me find it. Sorry, I've got some polling on this. And it is actually broadly popular. Not overwhelmingly so, but it is broadly popular. So I'm trying to find it now. As in 57% of the public are in favour of it. So it can't be said to be unpopular technically. But I would also argue some of the people who are... I mean, let me just put it up for you. Hold on. Let me just stick it up as the last few minutes. This was some polling done. When was this? Earlier this month. So it's up-to-date polling from Ipsos as well. Ipsos, along with YouGov, are the good ones. There are a couple of other decent ones as well. I'm not knocking the rest, but these are good ones, provably. So 57% in favour, just 19% opposed. Now, admittedly, if anything starts to go wrong, all of a sudden the people who support it now might go, oh, I never supported it. We know how that happens. But again, if you look at it by each individual age bracket there, it's very popular. You can see it's more popular amongst older people, which are the key ones for voting. It's popular amongst Labour voters. It's actually popular amongst all of those top four. It's only got the top four parties there. So amongst Labour voters, 61% in favour. Conservative voters, 74%. Even Reform UK, who are the most... Because Reform UK supporters are naturally more mistrustful of establishment, right? But I would query anyone who thinks, oh, I don't want the government having this stuff. It's like they already do. If the government wanted... The government already... What information do you think the government are getting out of this? That's what I would say. They've already got that information. They just don't link it up. They could easily link it up without doing anything like this if they want. And they probably should. The government should link things up. I find it maddening that different government agencies cannot share information. I find it ridiculous. You say, will that be YouGov polling with leading questions you can't answer truthfully? They don't know. YouGov are quite good at it. They don't do that. They only do that if you've been answering some YouGov questions, sometimes for commercial purposes. So you've got to understand, a polling company has clients. Sometimes those clients want to know something. Sometimes those clients want to prove something. So if you're doing a YouGov survey, just like any other pollster, if their client is someone who wants to create a sense of something, they will do that, right? But the political polling is absolutely fine. They always publish their questions and methodology, and it's absolutely... YouGov and Ipsos Mori's methodologies, it passes muster every single time. The experts are more than happy with it. And sorry, I was carrying on. Even Lib Dem voters, 67% in favour, only 18% against. It's like... I know a lot of people have filled in that petition because certain groups who've got an interest in not having it are just flying with they've sent out the mailing list, right? They've coordinated people on a mailing list. But the polling says that people are happy with it. I mean, it's not overwhelming. You know, it's 57% overall. It's not overwhelming. But it is a majority in every single age group. And it's a bigger majority in the most important age group electorally. So although I say it's politically risky, I don't say that in terms of where the public are on it now. It's not that it's an unpopular policy right now. It's politically risky in that I think there are technical challenges to it. I think trying to do it before the election... See, I don't know. Have other countries done it in the same time frame and it's been fine, in which case maybe there's nothing to worry about. But I just think you do something like this, never mind that people are fine with it now, you do something like this and then something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong with IT systems to begin with, right? They're always fine later, but to begin with. And all of a sudden, all those people who said that they support it, because it was anonymous, will suddenly go, oh, well, I never supported it. I thought it was a stupid idea to begin with. And it's like, yeah, is it worth doing it now? Tim there saying, I beg to differ. I no longer do their polls. They keep on sending begging emails. But that's just a fact of the matter. And I understand how polling industry works. The YouGov's political polling and Ipsos Morris's, the country's foremost experts are more than happy with their methodology. The methodology is sound. In fact, they use the country's foremost experts to form them. You say hand over a single database to a future authority. They've already got, they've already got the database. Like, what information do you think you're giving the government? They've already got it. They've got your name. They've got your date of birth. How do you think you have a national insurance number? How? They've already got this information. You're not giving the government information. They are giving you a way of proving to others that you have certain rights. It's a rights card. That's what they should have called it instead of the brick card. They should have, well, it's not a card at all. It's digital. They should have called it the rights card. You're not giving the government any information. They've already got it. They are giving you the means to prove you have rights. That's what it is. It's a way of proving you have rights. Not in a single place, but they could compile it. They can easily compile it. There's no problem with them compiling. It's not illegal. It's ridiculous that the government is so fractured. They don't need to introduce this thing to centralise it all. It's already there. Doesn't matter. It's not in one place. They can move it into one place whenever they like. Keir Starmer could straight away have come out and said, "Government's inefficient. We need to have a like in the 80s, you had Yes Minister, you had the Department of Administrative Affairs, which was created as a fake ministry, right? So that the idea was that you could then have stories on literally any area of government policy, and in theory, this nebulous Department of Administrative Affairs would deal with it, right? You could have such a department. Starmer could literally have created a department for administrative affairs. He'd have probably called it something different, right? So as not to invite ridicule. And it could have been their job to have this centralised system, which would require people to do nothing because the information's already in the government. In fact, SB Chef, they're saying, Tesco's Club Cards knows more about you and your habits. They and their competitors sell you data to each other. Exactly. Tesco have your buying habits. The government don't have that. And nor will they with this. All the government have is what they already have. The information they need to prove who you are. That's it. It's absolutely maddening that people are against this on civil liberties grounds when you are giving way more information to corporations who are selling that for commercial reasons. We are all doing it. The cost will be prohibitive to what you suggested. Clearly not, because they're going to do it. But anyway, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for coming on, everyone. We're going to agree to disagree on this one. Have a great rest of weekend. Until next time, I'll see you later.